If you or someone you know is struggling with alcoholism or addiction, do not hesitate to reach out for help. You can find numerous free resources on our website, thebeginagainpodcast.com, and there are tons of resources and support networks available online, in person, or just a phone call away. You don't have to face this challenge alone. Welcome to the Begin Again podcast. I'm your host, Gary Menkes. On the Begin Again podcast, we delve into the inspiring journeys of individuals who have overcome alcoholism and addiction and emerged as true trailblazers in entrepreneurship, business, sports, and beyond. Through authentic, uplifting, and profound conversations with our guests, we aim to shatter the stigma surrounding addiction and demonstrate that recovery can be a catalyst for remarkable success, strength, and resilience. We firmly believe that by listening to these accounts, you will be empowered to unlock your own potential, instigate positive change in your life, and contribute to the creation of a better world. So, get ready to be inspired and embark on your own personal journey of growth with the Begin Again podcast. Welcome back to the Begin Again podcast. I'm your host, Gary Menkes, and today it is my great pleasure to bring along, we're going to love his story today. I can tell, I can see the energy already in his face. We're having a really good conversation offline. Dino, look, he's ready to go. Dino Miliotis. Dino, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm glad you found me. I am extremely looking forward to hearing your story today and sharing it with the world. I think we have similar mantras. We want to help people, and let's hear the whole story.
Well, kind of like you. I mean, you know, your mantra, right? If you could touch one person, if something comes out of it and one person gets it, it's worth doing. It's worth doing. And so, like you, we're spreading hope. We're spreading inspiration, which I think a lot of people have lost hope. It's very easy to fall off the wagon, fall off the tracks, in other words.
Sure.
And sometimes, you know, to listen to different stories, different backgrounds, different ways of life, you know, it just gives you more tools, more ammunition, so that you kind of understand who you are and what you need to do, right?
Sure thing. You know, it's funny, you bring up a good point. Like I mentioned offline, I've been sober 17 plus years, and, you know, I came in to stop drinking, right? Like I just couldn't live that way anymore. And little did I know, I thought my life was over at the time, but little did I know my life was just beginning.
Exactly.
I found myself, like I say it often, like I was an adult in stature, but emotionally I was a little scared kid inside, and I didn't know it. I didn't think I was afraid of anything. I was the complete opposite, but it's all stuff I learned in sobriety. But I became an adult, I became a man in sobriety. And, you know, that's one of the things, one of the gifts. There's no big sign, right? When you're walking into wherever you're trying to change, there's no big sign saying, come on in, you can completely change your life. You know, I went in just because I had to stop drinking. I couldn't drink anymore. So, you know, that was part of my story. Maybe you've heard some of it, but I'd be happy to share with you offline. We're here to talk about you, but where'd you grow up? Do you know, where are you from, buddy?
Chicago boy.
There you
Yeah,
go.
born and raised in Chicago. Pretty much have lived in most cities all around the country. Love New York. Love where you're from. And I've been basically, they call me a serial entrepreneur. It's not really too far off, but basically just I see voids in markets. I see what's missing in the marketplace, right? And for some reason, I've always had this ability to kind of connect the dots quite easily. I know this kind of aggravates a lot of people, but it's true. You know, you connect the dots and you just see something that to me is so simple. And all it is just getting party A with party B, and you just create something that's magic, right? And that's really a gift. Don't ask me how. You're talking to a college dropout. I hated school, hated everything about that formal education, but I was more interested in people and what the world had to offer. And probably like you, from a very young age, believed that I could fly. You know, I had parents, they were great parents. I mean, they were strict, but, you know, they always encouraged me that I can do anything, you know, and I really believed them. So that belief was set in me from a very early age. And I was not afraid to start a business at 16, like I did, or at 19, like I did, or, you know, create a couple of home runs throughout my career, which I did. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I love that word, by the way. Serial entrepreneur is one of my,
It
favorite.
sounds creepy, but you know what? I don't know how I don't know how else to describe it.
Absolutely. I love that word. And let me tell you, I'm on the same team too. I enrolled a few times in college. I don't have any college degree whatsoever. When I was young, I was one of the smartest kids in my class. And by the time, high school, I barely graduated high school because I wasn't doing anything. I was always working. And I somehow got my foot in the door a few years later at a Wall Street firm, and I still do it actually to this day. But I always believed in, and that kind of part of the chip on my shoulder I had, I was surrounded by these Ivy Leaguers. And I said, I did one semester in Nassau Community College. I said, but I'm going to outwork you. That was always kind of my thing. I would always try to
Exactly.
outwork everybody. And you said
Exactly.
something too. It's about the people. Me too. It's about the relationships that you make, and it's about the people for sure. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not a fossil or anything, but I'm not a spring chicken either. But as much as I love technology today and all the things that it offers, I just find it just kind of ironic that as much as we've progressed, what's missing is the fundamentals probably you and I grew up with, which is like interacting with people, reading people, gestures, face to face, handshakes, eye contact, the things that we take for granted that really you'd be surprised how many people don't practice those today. It's well, I talked to this person. Did you talk to them or did you text them? Well, I
Right.
texted them. There's a big difference. But again, I mean, I'm not here to do the 101 class on social interaction, but it's great to be a people person because you understand people.
I love that point you bring up. I always thought that was one of sort of my superpowers. Like, and it is. It's one of the things that I know I can. I can read people. I can certainly read people, but it's from all the experiences, like you said, of looking people in the eye and shaking their hands and having real conversations with them. And yes, things have changed today. Like, my business used to be on two telephones, and now
Yeah, me
everything's on
too.
in a chat box. Like, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. It's certainly
Oh,
has changed. But to your point, today when I walk into a room, like I have a gift. I can sense if they're a good person. I can sniff BS in a heart.
oh,
I know
yeah.
you can for sure. But it's one of my and you're right. I agree. It's one of the things that maybe you and I take for granted, but not too many people really have. I
Yeah. Well, here, I mean, what's old is new. And isn't it funny? I mean, when this was happening and it was starting to happen and everybody started losing contact, a friend of mine was saying, oh, wow, we're being weeded out. And I said, no, don't you see? This is job security, dude, because they're always going to come back to the OG people,
Yeah,
right? The
absolutely.
originals. And then they're going to ask, well, how did you do it? One day somebody's going to ask me, well, how did you use the telephone? I mean, I'm kidding, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, look, behind every big business, there's a person.
Mm,
And that's kind of how I looked at it.
mm.
And so I was never afraid to delve into things. But again, that type of personality, um, it's a recipe for disaster because if you have that personality, you may also have that personality for excess.
Mm,
Okay, so let's get into drugs and alcohol. You see what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah.
Nothing exceeds like excess, was my motto. And the thing is it was false reinforcement because throughout my career, I'm creating companies and, I created a product called Bug Band, which is just very simply, it was a plastic wristband that was infused with fragrances, lemongrass, geranium, citronella oil, and the scent worn on the wrist, would last for 40 hours. And this was right at the time when everybody was talking about DEET and the chemicals and the lotions. This was before citronella candles, or actually right when they were starting. So it was something completely different, and people are just like, what? You're going to wear what on your wrist? Anyway, next thing you know, I'm on the Oprah show.
Mm.
I'm in People magazine. I'm in Forbes, and you'd go to a gas station just to pump gas in your car and you get people running after you and you're, hey, I saw you on TV. It's like, dude, I don't know you, get out of here. And it's a surreal experience. And I will say that, it doesn't make me, forgive, but I better understand, these true celebrities, these A-listers. When you read about sometimes where they're train wreck in their lives and stuff, and they kind of messed up with drugs and alcohol, I better understand how that happens. It's kind of a lonely world because you're different. You're always being interviewed. You're always trying to make that perfect sound bite and that perfect one liner. You always want to portray that perfect image. And, none of us are perfect, and so I needed bravery, right? And I found that calming feeling, in a bottle of vodka.
Mm.
And specifically, I mean, I remember, you take a sip of vodka and then it just goes down, and all of a sudden your stomach gets nice and warm, and all of a sudden you're like, and that was my suit of armor, right? And I'm
Mm.
just like, oh, I got this, For a while it worked.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, let's not lie. That's really what addicts do. They chase the feeling of their first time.
100%. I remember the first time I dabbled in cocaine the first time, and I was with some people close to me, and they're like, "How do you feel?" I'm like, "I want to get that first time I did. I want to feel like I did, an hour ago."
It was amazing. It was the
That's
first time
the
I'm like,
chase.
whoa, this is cocaine, wow.
Right.
But never ever felt exactly like that ever again.
Never again.
Never.
And it allowed me to drink longer, so I really
Absolutely.
started doing it.
Absolutely. So, and then it becomes a balancing act, later on. So this bug ban, I know I'm probably going all over the place.
No, you're good.
The bug ban was in the late 90s, like 1996, 1997. At that time, that's when I really became an alcoholic. I mean, for lack of a better word. And let's clarify, it also involved drugs. So it was a steady progression going further and further and further in my life. And it's a balancing act, like everybody out there who probably understands. I mean, yeah, some people are just exclusively wine drinkers or exclusively scotch or vodka. But the people I know, or me, I was like everything, right? I was like, oh, you got Vicodin, cool. Methadone, cool. Vodka, yes. Cocaine, check. And so what happens is you do this balancing act. Then it would take longer and longer to find that equilibrium, just of what I thought was normal. But basically, let's face it, the ability to talk to somebody where you think you look okay. I
Right.
mean, that's what normal is. And they know, but we think they don't know. And it took longer and longer to achieve that level. And that level achieved, once it was achieved, it never lasted long. So here we go again with the balancing act. And I mean, I got bad. But before I got bad, let's not forget that I hit my second home run, where basically I'm one of the pioneers of outsourced payroll. Okay. So when I got involved in outsourced payroll, it was a very new concept. Nobody willingly, no business willingly wanted to give somebody their payroll to do. Oh, I could do it better for you and it'll be cheaper. You see? Well, you're already paying an internal staff to do it. I could do it better. They're like, hey, get out of here. You're taking my payroll? Get out of here. Right? So it was a hard sell. Here I am, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know what? The true power is in the brokers. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, people who already have relationships with these companies. We educate them. We cut them in on commission. They sell it. They're like, well, who are you talking about? And as soon as I'm saying this, there's some dude that's walking into the office saying, hey, Bob, you ready to reorder? How much copy paper can I put you down for? How much copy ink can I put you down for? How's the wife and kids? I'm like, that guy.
Wow.
You understand?
Sure.
Next thing you know, I indoctrinated these people, and it was like a pedestal and I'm performing a sermon, right? But I'm like preaching to these people till they finally got the message, and they walked out of that room just like electricity. Next thing you know, make a long story short, outsourced payroll is used all over the world. That was me. And by the way, I was very, very, very addicted to drugs and alcohol while I was doing it. So what is that telling me? Somebody like me who's got the ego the size of a planet, right? Look at me. I don't have a problem. Everybody loves me. I'm making truckloads of money. Everybody's using my product, and it's because of me. You know what I mean? So instead of doing what it should do to regular people, which is just like, hey, man, my performance is slipping. I'm not showing up at work. I don't look my best. It was just like, Nobody cares how I look. Everybody loves me. Everybody wants to do business with me. And by the way, everybody knew that I was a full-blown alcoholic, right? I would come into meetings with a glass of vodka. No rocks, just a glass of vodka, because they knew that was my medicine. And I've said this on many podcasts. So for me, it was very difficult to justify why I should stop. I just thought that the suffering part, the balancing part that I was telling you about, the heartburn, the lethargic feelings and stuff like that, throwing up, all that stuff. I just thought that was part of the price you pay for the life you choose.
Right.
That's crazy, right?
It is crazy. But that's the mind of an addict or an alcoholic or wherever you want to call a sick man, right? I mean, you are, I think, an outlier for sure, where obviously you own these companies. So you're able to walk in these places with a glass of vodka, but you're also on top of the world too, right? So
Yeah.
I was the opposite. Like I couldn't do anything. And I actually, the minute I stopped drinking was when my career actually took off. Go figure. I don't know, connect those dots. But I think it's fascinating that you have these, early on, 16, you started business, 19, another business, you have amazing success with Bug Band. You're on top of the world there. You start another amazing company, outsourced payroll. You're kind of a double celebrity, and your addictions or your disease is getting worse and worse. And you just, it must be extremely difficult when you're on top of the world and everything is coming your way. It seems like everything is great. So how do you say, hey, there's a problem? What happens? What happens to Dino? What makes him take a look in the mirror or whatever happened and made you say, I can't do this anymore?
Right. Well, great point. Great segue too, because, it's the ugly side of success that I kind of wanted to show. So don't discount the fact that, everybody who's watching, what you see sometimes in interviews, what you see on TV or even commercials, you don't know, or even social posts. You don't know what's behind those photos. I could look great for one moment, and then as soon as the camera stops, you don't know that I might be sleeping on the couch all day or working off a hangover. You don't know what goes on in people's lives. I mean, it's amazing. But I will tell you that for me, it was brought to the forefront, especially not because of COVID, but it accelerated because of COVID, where you get the whole world stopped, literally. The whole world stopped.
Yes, it did.
And so you have people with their addictions and their fears and their phobias and their demons, and maybe couples, relationships that aren't so great. Now you're stuck in a house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even measure the effects of what's happened. And I'm not one of these like town criers where, oh, look, it destroyed everybody, but just understand that a lot of people, a lot more than anybody could possibly imagine, have been suffering, right? From alcoholism, drug and alcohol, depression, anxiety, PTSD, all kinds of stuff that I'm just like, whoa. So back to my story, right? So with payroll, I took that until 2019, the end of 2019. It got so bad. So I got houses everywhere. I got cars. In one house, I had 3 Rolls Royces and a Lambo. Okay. What a tough life. But, I was just really into money, man. I mean, it's just material stuff. It's just stuff that I found out very quickly doesn't really matter if you're dead, right? But everybody left me. My friends are no longer around. My business associates, instead of helping me, they're kind of like, I'm not blaming them, right? I'm blaming me. But you know how people, when they see the king that's touchable because he bleeds and they revel in his downfall?
Sure.
That's kind of how I felt. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he's not indestructible, So great friends, but were they ever my friends? But worst was my relationship with my wife. I mean, it completely destroyed my marriage. So I remember I'm sitting in a mansion in San Diego, and I got all this artwork and all this fancy crap all over. I got the house, the garage filled with rollies, and I'm just crying, and I'm holding the vodka and I'm crying. I'm like, I have all this and I have nothing. I have nothing. I'm a loser. You know what I'm saying? Enough is enough. I could not stop on my own. I walked away from my own business. It's $1 billion a year business. I just one day I'm gone. See you. Well, what about all the accounts? You keep them. Just walked away. And I went into the doors of rehab, which I said I would never do because rehab is for losers. You know what I mean? Oh, look at me. Why would I go into rehab? But I did. And I told myself that I wasn't going to tell anybody who I was. Not that it's a big deal, but where I live, what money, or who cares? Right. I was just a regular dude that felt less than zero. Probably like most people who walk into rehab, it's not like on my bucket list of fun things to do, trust me. But I couldn't quit on my own. I admire people who can, and a lot of people do. But for me, I was so chemically dependent on, you're talking about a handle of vodka a day and mounds of cocaine. Like I think I finished a key in 6 months. Which they tell me is pretty fast. I mean, I don't know. Who cares? At the time. But, if I would stop any one of those pollutants for even an hour, I would get violent shakes and I would feel ill. But at the same time, I would drink not to feel those shakes, but in drinking, I would vomit. And you'd think like I'd lay off, but I'd wait till I finished vomiting and then I'd have another sip just to balance. I'm gone. I'm just like afraid, like if I stop cold turkey, I'm going to get a heart attack or something or seize up. Sure. And everybody says that I could have died if I did that on my own. So I really had no choice. I mean, what are my options, dude? I was going to die. It was just a ticking, against me all along the way. So I did go into rehab. What scared me the most was the detox period. And believe it or not, that was the easiest part. And, they said that detox would last for maybe 3 to 7 days, depending on the severity. They'd give you some medication to kind of, whatever. But for the most part, it wasn't strong medication. But here's the thing. I knew that I needed to replace bad habits with good habits, right? And in this recovery center, they had a full music room, I played drums. So it was like all decked out drum set and soundproofed and all that stuff. They had a workout room. And I was like, I told one of the counselors, I'm like, can I use these things? Well, not when you're in detox. Once you finish detoxing and you stop the medication, then you can. I'm thinking to myself, okay, what if I refuse my medication, the rest of my medication? She's like, do you really want to do that? I'm like, to play in that music room? Hell yeah, I do. So I stopped. And I remember I didn't walk to them. I ran to the music room. And I just beat the crap out of those drums by myself. And it was just like, it was a feeling I haven't felt in like decades, not years, decades, right? And I was on my way. The thing that scared me the most was not the recovery. It was what happens when I get out of this protective bubble, right? So remember, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I was groomed by mentors much older than me to read people and understand people and all that stuff. And thank God for that training, because where everybody else is kind of savoring that good feeling and, we're in a group and we're having, this big kumbaya moment. And I'm not knocking it. It was great. It was like summer camp. I'm thinking about, what? When I get out of here, it's in the middle of a COVID lockdown because I went in 7/7/2020. And not everybody's going to be kumbaya, right? Not everybody's going to have a counselor or a lifeline that you can call. What then? I don't know anything about the sober community. I don't know any podcast. What is a podcast, by the way? I was like in that state. So I was terrified. And what I did is I consumed the brains of counselors that had 10 years, 12 years, 17 years recovery under their belt. You want to know why? Because I knew that one day friends and family of mine would pass or there'd be some tragedy. And how do you handle that? Do you just say, oh, well, so-and-so passed away and I got to go to the funeral and I feel so bad. I just started drinking. I don't want to be that guy, right? I needed to hear from them coping mechanisms. And one of the counselors He did. He lost his son to drug addiction. And I asked him flat out, I said, did you relapse? Did you feel like drinking? And he told me how he did it and how it wasn't going to bring his son back. And it was the very illness that took his son. And how can he shame him by going back? I mean, it was all this reasoning and logic that he was using to justify to himself, like, hey, it's not worth it. Had I not gotten those skills, heard his reasoning, I think I would have been one of the victims, because shortly after I got out, I lost my mother and I lost my stepson. It was like back-to-back tragedies. And not that it was a pleasant experience, but I proudly can say that I did not relapse because of them. It's just a weird thing.
You know, you bring us some things that I was taught early on, and it's to seek out people. For me, it was guys, guys in the rooms. For me, it was AA. That's where I got sober. I went to a rehab upstate New York as well for 30 days. It's called St. Christopher's. They called it the Miracle on the Mountain. And it was an amazing place. A few things are jumping out at me is that you internally in your mind were looking around to see who has what you want, someone that has that sobriety that you want, and to study them essentially, but go seek them out. I think that's amazing, but I'm kind of amazed and impressed, for lack of a better word, at your clarity at that stage of it, Dino. Like, you're coming off a really bad spell. You are pretty rock bottom, certainly emotionally, certainly spiritually, if you want to bring up that word. But to be in that rehab, right? And to have that clarity and that fear of, I don't want to go back out there and be one of the guys that, I went to rehab or I got sober for X amount of days and I fell off. It seems like you had a very, very healthy fear of relapsing, but you also had this clarity of how do I attack that? And you kind of solved the problem on your own.
At least for me in my addiction, right? I wasn't a binger where I'm just going to finish a whole bottle in an hour, right? But it had to be in my system all the time. And I'm talking 24/7. I wouldn't sleep more than an hour because I'd have to wake up and drink more vodka. Saying that, I mean, for some reason, I always knew my true north. I always knew what I was doing was wrong. I always knew that I was better than this. I just, got the crap beaten out of me, and I didn't know what to do. And when it finally kicked in, true story, when it finally kicked in for me was, I would get up at 5:00 in the morning in the recovery center and I would go to the gym. And the first day I went by myself. Second day, somebody that was staying in the same house said, can I tag along? By the end of the week, I had 25 people following me at 5:00 in the morning. Now, I didn't notice it. This is how, you forget who you are, right? And one of the counselors is like, hey, are you some kind of physical therapist or something? I'm like, no, why? It's like every day you come, I've never seen 25 people wake up at 5:00 in the morning. And when I looked, I'm like, I still got it. I never lost it. I just forgot.
Right.
And so from that point on, I knew that, I am better than this. And if I am better than this, then I need to go back to being the 16-year-old Dino that would just study. I mean, creepy study. A mentor of mine, that usually it's people that I worked for, I wouldn't ask them, how do you do this? And how did you invent that or whatever? I'd ask them, why do you wake up at 5? What do you think about at night? When do you do your to-do list? I mean, I would watch everything about them, and their habits were always the same. If you study successful people, always, their habits are the same. So for me to be that kind of a crazy observer and not say to myself, here's an opportunity where I have counselors and therapists all in one place. And it's like a library. I could study any book anytime I want. Wouldn't you do that?
Absolutely. I want to keep talking about your disease, but you're making me segue into another big important part is, people get sober, but there's other residual effects, like they get healthier, right? And they start taking care of their bodies better, right? But you're talking about one of my favorite topics is the mindset, and the mindset of a winner, the mindset of a champion, the mindset of a go-getter, if you will, right? And I love those questions. Those are the questions that I ask. Like if you look on my wall, I have like Michael Jordan
I
and
see.
Derek Jeter, and I have those guys on my wall not because they won all the championships. Like they all represent something to me. Like Michael Jordan to me is the hardest working guy in the room. Kobe Bryant represents three things for me. He represents life is short. I had a widowmaker heart attack 4 years ago, almost to the day. Represents life is short. He represents that talent is in everything. It's work ethic that will always win over.
Always.
And it's those things of athletes or people in business like yourself that I am so interested in. Tell me about your morning routine, if you will. Are you still getting up at 5 a.m.? I'm going to guess you are.
I do. I believe these days in having a sustainable lifestyle, right? So I could go to the gym and I could bulk up and find out that very quickly I'm not going to fit in my suits and I'll probably not have a neck. I don't want that anymore, right? I'm not a kid. I'm pushing 60 or I'm 58. It's just not that important to me. But, a healthy, well-rounded lifestyle, right? My whole thing was this, right? There's two ways to tackle sobriety. Anybody out there who quits, at least the ones that I've talked to, there is a great percentage that relapse. Right. And it's not a bad thing as long as you want to try and get back on. Right. But it's a high percentage. It's in the 90s, like 95%. Some people say 98%. It's enough to scare the crap out of me. Let's put it that way. I don't want to be that guy that goes 7 times into rehab. OK, so I had to figure out how I'm going to tackle this. Right. Because this is the one thing I can't beat is my addiction. It's the only thing I haven't conquered. But if I understand it, I can work around it. Just like if you have a bad hip, you work around your exercises right? It's the same thing. It's not anything earth shattering. I'm not giving you we're not splitting atoms here, right? But I needed to understand that the finality of quitting, that I can never drink again. It's not one of those things, well, let's stop for a year or two, and then you hopefully can drink socially. I can't. Now, people are probably going to hate me for this. I wish I could. I wish I could be one of those guys that can casually have a glass of scotch and smoke a cigar and, seem like you're having fun with all your friends, because it's a social thing. At least that's how it's marketed. But I'm just not one of those guys. I can't do it. So what am I going to do? Am I going to hide from real people? Am I going to think like nobody's ever going to drink around me? Do I avoid bars? Do I start thinking to myself, where am I going to meet women? I mean, they're all at the, and I'm not the only one who thinks like this, right? And so you have two choices. One, that you're going to have a very sterile, safe life where almost like you're walking on eggshells and you don't want to touch anything bad. Or you could feel so strong in your aura and how you carry yourself that you could say, no matter what's around me, as long as my convictions are strong, nothing can shake me. Much like I was laughed at when I came up with the mosquito bracelet, much like I was laughed at when I said, you know what, outsourced payroll is going to be a household name. And I was laughed at. I got thick skin. Now, if I bent at every opposition, at the laughter, how would you do it? Because you're laughing. Don't laugh at me. You're very mean to me. Screw that. If you believe it so strong, you just know. You just know. This is no different. So it's very interesting because we're both like in the lovers of business and thrill seekers, that the way I understood addiction best was to make it almost like a business. Because you relate to business, you respect the art of sale, you respect, the jousting that happens, and you don't shake hands and make deals with everybody that you 100% love. You're not going to invite them over for a holiday dinner, let's put it that way. But you understand that you can still coexist and do business with them. Well, I just did the same thing with my addiction. I shook hands with the bottle, a worthy opponent. I respect the boundaries, but I'm not going to avoid it. So crazy me, fast forward 3 years, because I'm only sober 3 years. I have a full bar in my house. Don't try this at home. But it's not for me, but it's for the people that come over my house, guests, family, friends. that happen to drink. You know, you can easily say, hey, this is a sober house, this is an alcohol-free house, bring a soda. But if you want to watch people feel uncomfortable all night long, go ahead and try that. And I'm not knocking it for anybody else, but for me, like I said, I want a life that is natural and sustainable, that's not artificial.
No, that's it.
And real life happens. And in real life, bad things happen and bad people come into your life and challenges happen. You can't avoid them. You got to attack them. If you truly want to live a life that's free, you have to look at those fears and phobias and learn how to live with them. That's the only way that you're going to grow.
Absolutely. That's a great point, and that's well said about the fear. That's something that I speak with a lot with people is the fears. I said earlier that I didn't think I was afraid of anything. And if you saw me on the outside, I think I probably acted like I wasn't afraid of anything.
Yeah.
But in the inside, I was afraid of everything. I could put the word fear on everything. I'm afraid of what Dino's going to think of me. I'm afraid of what I look like. I'm afraid I'm not smart enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not fast enough. I'm not, all of it. I'm not
Yeah.
good enough. I hear it a lot. All roads lead to I suck. And it was internally. And I flipped it over on the outside, especially when I was dousing it with alcohol.
Yeah.
I masked it all with I'm not afraid of anything. And,
Right.
to the extreme.
Liquid bravery. And isn't it funny when we're at our worst, we thought it was our best, when you're like stinking drunk and you crack these jokes and you think you're like the life of the party and you're so funny, you're really not funny.
No, you're not. You bring up something too. When I was, and I had mentioned earlier, like I moved up in my company when I, 6 months into being sober, connect those dots. But I sat there at that desk for a while thinking like, how am I going to further my career if I can't go out and entertain these people?
Right.
You had the word entertain of how I used to be, because there was times like I was a lot of fun to be around too. Like I could be the happiest guy in the place, and a drop of the dime, I'd be the nastiest guy of the place.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you never
yeah.
knew what you were gonna get. But I also could bring the fun too. And I there was times I had a lot of fun out there, and I'm just being, honest too.
No,
Looking back, my view of fun has greatly changed.
but everybody grows up too. You know what I mean? I mean, the stuff that we used to do as kids that we found funny or exciting or whatever, you wouldn't do now. I mean, you can have a good chuckle about it in memory and you think back, but it's like everybody kind of grows up. But
Right.
isn't it funny how your background and my background, it was the opposite. Partying and drinking was acceptable and it
Mhm.
was understood, and it actually was condoned, or like, oh, of course, this guy's working so hard and he never sleeps because he's doing this and that,
Yeah.
and which is complete opposite of the way affluent people look at addiction. They
Right.
think of the homeless person, they think of the person that's fighting with their spouse, significant other. They think about the person that's carrying, the bottle with a brown paper bag that doesn't have any money, and all that stuff. And isn't it funny how all classes, all walks of life, it's the addiction part. I mean, alcohol is an equal opportunity destroyer. Doesn't
100%.
matter how much money you make or your background or what family you came from. Doesn't give a crap.
No,
It will destroy you if you're one of those people who, the way I look at it, is allergic to drugs and alcohol.
couldn't agree more. 100%. That's the other thing too is about alcoholism is it destroys. It'll destroy. It was destroying you. It was destroying me. But it's a family destroyer. It destroys the collateral damage of the addicted, of the alcoholic, whatever we want to label that person, the sick person. The collateral damage that it does to families it's horrific.
Devastating.
Devastating, absolutely devastating. And, you had mentioned you kind of made a deal. You looked at it at a disease, as a business. You looked at that as a business for you to stay sober. I was sort of had a relationship with it. I used to I had a love affair with partying. I had a love affair with drinking. I did. I drank abnormally. I abnormally enjoyed it. I abnormally had fun with it. You mentioned growing up. I just didn't grow up. I still wanted to do all those stupid things, and the stupid things were getting worse and worse and worse. But so today, which is amazing. If you knew me 17 plus years ago, like today, because of the reasons I had just said, because of what it does to the families, I despise it. I despise alcohol. Now I say that I do. I hate it, but I say that I have a bar full too. I have parties. I have
There you
family.
go.
I'll throw a party I'll throw a party every summer. My wife and my wife is, she'll pour herself a glass of wine and she'll never finish it. And I still don't understand that. She's a civilian. But we'll have a Halloween party, like we do. And I'm the same way. And I'll go to the liquor store and I'll stock up, but that's because I'm comfortable with where I am. Early on, like first couple of years, like I checked out. I feel like, and I had the same group of buddies since, my kindergarten, first grade, the same tight group of guys. Right. And
Yeah.
there was a time where I kind of checked out. I just had to, because I was the guy who you had mentioned earlier. I went to rehab in 2002. My sobriety date is 2006. So there was 4 years I was in and out.
Yeah.
But in and out of AA, and I was, I stopped 3 or 4 times, and something changed in me, and I can't even put a finger on it. What happened May 12th, 2006, I just didn't want to live that way anymore. If it meant I had to give up my buddies and my identity, it was my identity. It was who I was. I had to. I didn't have any other choice, and I had to have a drink since. And you mentioned too.
Totally get it. Totally get it. And one of the things is that, the unbelievable attempts that a lot of people make. I'll be the first one to master how I can only have a drink and not get addicted. Everybody does it, right? And that's one of the things. It's like, you even see concoctions in social, where it's just like, have all the effects of drugs and alcohol, but it's not addictive. How many times have we heard that? You're not going to beat this one. This is just one that you're not going to beat. And you got to be able to live with it and be okay with it and accept the fact that, no, I'm not going to be boring, but I'm not going to be afraid of stuff. You know what I mean?
100%.
You mentioned the family. Yeah, I've been divorced 3 times. Who thought that? It was really, every single time was because of my addiction. But the wife I left when I went into rehab, we had a perfect relationship, like 3rd time's a charm. It was perfect. The problem is that I think we met influenced by drugs and alcohol. And I think our marriage was destroyed because of drugs and alcohol. And, now fast forward, we're both clean and sober, and I'm very proud of her and stuff. We have a better friendship now than we had when we were married, but we've grown apart.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it funny? And that will include friends, like you were talking about. You just grow apart. The stuff that was interesting at the time, if it's hazardous to your health, and let's face it, everything we touch could be hazardous to our health because we're extremes. You know what I mean? We can't just, it's like a Jay's potato chip. You just can't have one, man, So you gotta do deep dives and understand who you are better than anybody. And not knocking this profession, but going to a psychiatrist and talking about your problems, and all they're doing is just giving you pills and upping the dose and stuff. I don't want to live like a zombie either. I want to feel. I don't want to avoid feeling, but that's how you handle things. And especially in business, the art of what I do has a lot to do with feeling. If you numb that, you may think you had the best meeting in the world, and they may hate you, but because you can't feel, you're just getting like this clouded view of stuff. So I'm loving my life. I'm very blessed. I should have been dead like 9 times. I'm glad it only took once. I vowed it would be the first and last time I'm in rehab. And it was because of this and this beautiful exposure, especially during COVID, to this sober community that's just everywhere, that I started, like, again, astute thinker and starting to see how everything is, and I devoted my time to helping others. I never thought that my story was so interesting that it would inspire other people, but I wrote a book during COVID. right? And then people started reaching out. And then next thing you know, I'm either on the phone or on the computer morning, noon, and night. Sometimes I don't go to sleep till 4 o'clock in the morning because I'm helping somebody in need. I was just like, what the hell happened? Right. But there's so many people out there. And, after I started getting good at it, I started getting, I'm not going to lie, I still have that entrepreneurial itch. It's just like, ah. So I decided to just throw my hat in the ringer one more time because I had one more good one in me. And I found something that people start coming to you when they start finding that you're clean and sober and stuff. And I'm very fortunate on that. But anyway, I was approached by this company that is it's got patent protection, it's FDA approved, and it's this technology. They've created this algorithm that was developed specifically for hospitals and clinicians, doctors' offices, to help people. So when they come in, it could read exactly what the problem is, so they know what kind of medication to provide, the dosage, because it's uniquely you, right? And it's gonna revolutionize how streamlined it is. Because I remember, feeling depressed because of the isolation. I was sober 1 year, where you'd think like, okay, I don't have a physical addiction to it, right? One night, I felt like I needed a drink. And I was like, what the hell? Why would I need a drink? Again, the mind, man, the mind. Right after my rehab, that's in the middle of nowhere. I have no friends, no family, nobody to talk to. And every day was the same. I'm like watching 456 episodes of Law and Order, and everybody's eating the same thing. Everybody's inside. You can't communicate. I'm a very social person. And I guess that isolation just got me, because one day I just felt like freaking drinking. I was just like, oh my God, this is what the hell's wrong? So I go to the emergency room and they're like, when was the last time you had a drink? I said, a year. Oh, well, you shouldn't be feeling like this. I'm like, I know, but I am. Well, describe how you feel. Well, I feel like crap. Well, is there something hurting? Is something burning? Let's take your temperature. So basically, it's like learn by doing. They're just poking and prodding me and trying to figure something out. And then they'd send me home and say, there's nothing wrong with you,
Right.
Which is really aggravating, right?
Yeah.
The next day, I felt the same way. I went to the ER again. And the next time I felt like that, I went to the ER again, until they finally, just to appease me, they're just like, here, talk to a therapist. So I started talking to a therapist. They want to give me medication to dumb me down. I'm like, I don't want to feel dumb. I don't want to feel numb. So what can you prescribe? They're like, well, I said, you know what it is? I'm packing up and I'm moving. I'm tired of being isolated. I'm going to revisit my family, reintroduce myself to my friends, and screw this isolation. I can't do it. And you know what the therapist told me? I should disagree with you and tell you we should have more sessions. But honestly, I know you by now and you should go. This is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Why am I telling you this story? Because this technology was developed for the reason I can relate to this technology that was developed was for just that reason. Because I'm like, you know what? I wish this technology was in the doctor's office when I showed up, because they could hook me up. And instead of asking me these crazy questions like, how do you feel? You shouldn't feel like this. You know exactly what's going on, right?
Wow. Interesting.
So if that isn't good enough, I looked at it a different way, because remember, I'm Mr. Connect the Dots. And I said, this technology shouldn't be reserved just for the doctor's offices. This, in the world of self-care and deep dives and wellness, it should be in the hands of people, ordinary people, not only the people that are suffering from drugs and alcohol, not only the people that are on the road to recovery, but as you mentioned very perfectly before, the friends and family of that person. You're talking about there's 3 to 5 friends and family for every person who's addicted, right? So the number one reason that everybody says why somebody relapsed is because they either missed or ignored the signs. Not only the person who's addicted, But the friends and family, oh, gee, I knew John was suffering, but I didn't know he was suffering that bad. We
Yep.
should have made a stop over his house. I should have made that call. I should have invited him to dinner like we were talking about. Should have, could have, would have,
Yep.
right? We missed or ignored the signs. So what did I do? I'm talking to the sober community for over a year. I'm helping all these people. The administrators and the moderators believed and trusted me so much that when they were taking vacations, they would alert the group. Like, if you need any help, call this guy, which is an honor. Who am I? I mean, it's not even my platform. And I'm just like, wow, this is so cool. But talk about. Anyway, so I got to know these people very, very well. And all of a sudden, one day, bing, it hit me. I'm like, I'm going to create an app with this technology. I'm going to combine them both, sync them to a wearable device like an Apple Watch or a Samsung or a Fitbit. And we will have the world's first AI sobriety app. Intuitive, biometric technology. Let me just a little bit blow your mind. I can't say the name of the app yet, but I will. But I will say it will be available everywhere in October. This is Dino, the entrepreneur, who's clean and sober for the first time ever. And this is the third home run and the best by far because it's rewarding and I can actually feel it for once. So let's just say if I told you tomorrow there's a 98% chance of rain, what would you do tomorrow? You would cancel your picnic or your outdoor sporting event. You'd probably bring an umbrella, or if you're straight up crazy about rain, maybe you wouldn't do anything and just say, oh, tomorrow I'm going to dance in the rain, whatever. But 98% chance it's going to rain tomorrow. You would adjust your schedule.
Sure. Agreed.
Okay.
Yep.
It gives you an opportunity to alter the outcome of a wetsuit, wet clothing, or a flood or whatever. Well, this is what this app is going to do. It will tell you how you're going to feel, not today, tomorrow. Let me repeat that. Tomorrow.
You said
98% accuracy. So I can tell you tomorrow if you're going to have a 98% chance that you're going to feel withdrawals, or you're going to feel bad, or you might relapse. I can predict it. This is such cutting. The future is now. This is the coolest stuff ever. Now, some people are just like, well, I don't want to know. Why wouldn't you know that? We're talking about something where you have the ability to alter the outcome, right? So it'll tell you things like, you didn't sleep enough and you need to sleep more tonight, or you didn't drink enough water, or maybe you should take a walk. This thing within 3 days, this wearable device becomes uniquely you. It knows you. Sometimes better than you know yourself. It's your buddy, okay? It knows you so well that if you wanted to be sneaky and you took your device off and gave it to me, and I started wearing it and acting like you, it knows I'm not you. You're tired, and this is happening in October. That's why I'm so excited about it. And I got to tell you, if I didn't go through and be able to proudly wear the stripes of sobriety right now, there's no way I would have been able to catch this third lightning in a bottle and present it to the world. This will change the way recovery is done forever. And you want to talk also about the friends and family, not to borrow a phrase from a phone company, but the friends and family, it's kind of a cool plan where they can also have a monitoring device. And you could sync the person's information onto theirs. I mean, you approve what you want. So basically, if I'm really feeling bad, it will alert my friends and family. It will alert my doctor. It will alert the ER if I want it to. So all these people that say, well, I ignored or missed the signs, not anymore. You're going to know that tomorrow Johnny may not be feeling well, and maybe we should just schedule to come over and cook at his house and watch a movie. You're altering the outcome.
Yeah, your words. You're ready to blow my mind. You're blowing my mind.
Yeah, this is just, I mean, it's just so different because you hear, AI, everybody thinks it's like a robot, like, they're taking over machines taking over the world. It's not like that, but everybody's using that term very loosely. And, what it amounts to is these little bot questions where they'll ask you different things because of repetitive, frequently asked questions. This is not this. This is biometrics. This is the real deal. This is intuitive stuff that's never been done before. And I cannot believe how quickly this thing it was just like, so I called the sobriety people and I arranged a meeting with the technology people. And I said, okay, we're all going to sit in a room until you guys see what I see. And they're just sitting there and they're just like, I don't get it. I'm like, no, let me explain. So next thing you know, eureka, we have magic, and it's going to save a lot of lives. It will prevent overdoses for sure. It's going to prevent grief. It's going to allow people to come home one more night where you don't have to go, to a funeral of a friend and stuff like that. At the very worst, that's what it's going to do. But at the very best, because what I've noticed in my short time in sobriety, in recovery, is that it's not just the people that just got clean and sober. There are people 10 years in, 20 years in, that same thing. You could slip up and you can relapse. So it's on one hand, it's helping the immediate people that just get clean and sober, either through rehab or AA or what have you. And it walks them through. It's kind of like your buddy, your crutch. But it's also going to help the people that have adopted sobriety as a lifestyle, who may have a bad day.
We do.
Right?
Absolutely.
It will be much the same as like a navigation app where you're going through and it says red light camera ahead, which means a speed trap. Let's face it, that's what it means. And then you look at your speed and you're like, well, I'm not speeding, or, oh, thank God, or you're looking for that cop car, right? Aren't you? Well, what if one day you got a little notification that says, hey, tomorrow, here's what you could do, though, to alter that. You can drink water and you really need to sleep at least an hour or two more. Try this, try that. Do you want to tap into our community? Go ahead and tap in now. There's 20 million people that you can share information with, right? So for the person who's clean 10 years, 20 years, it's just as valuable. So that's why I'm excited about it. I mean, if you ever want to leave this world, because when you're rock bottom, you don't know when your time's up. You think it's already up. But if you ever want to leave this world and be known for more than just, oh, that funny, crazy guy that used to be the great partier, or that guy that all he thought about was money, try something like this. This is literally going to change the way things are done.
This is the reason why I started this podcast, because I want to inspire people with stories of redemption, of overcoming things. Most people would think maybe at one of your worst points in your life, you go to that rehab, right? And 3 years later, you have turned that on your head. You're sober man today, but you've turned it on your head, and you're taking that and you have newfound purpose in your life you just said so many amazing things, by the way. I think you said at its worst, it's going to save lives, and it's going to predict a overdose. So you could just listen. I've sold a few things in my day. I think that's all I would need to sort of make that sale. But, joking aside, Dino, like to take that point in your life 3 years later, and this is what your new next lightning in a bottle is going to be, and you're going to be working on saving lives is, this is why I started this podcast. And, I'm big into building relationships. Like I said, offline, you need to promise us all that in come October, or if it's early or whenever it is that you're coming back on for
absolutely
things are.
And I'll be wearing one. Absolutely. This is very, very big. And I will say that it wouldn't just work if it's solely technology, but because it's linked into the sober community, which, by the way, shout out to everybody out there, some who are suffering today, some who relapsed, some who are sober for a short time or a long time, right? We're all part of a very, very beautiful, powerful club that is members only. that doesn't have hierarchy. There's no general, there's no private. Everybody's the same, and everybody's story is equally interesting. And the great part about this community, now you're going to hear another cliche, it is like the commercial, The Red Roof Inn. We're here and we'll leave the light on.
Love it.
Because I may not need your help for a year, but when I do, I know you're there. Don't you see? 100%. So if everybody who's helping somebody else just quit today because, this message isn't getting through, it's not resonating with anybody, leave the light on. Because you can't control somebody else, but when they're ready for their reasons, they're ready. And if there's no hotel room that they can open the door to, right? That would be a sad world. That's what you're doing. You're Mr. Red Roof Inn.
We'll leave the light on for you. I love it.
There you go. You could steal another slogan.
I love it. Dino, it has been an education today, and it's been a pleasure to get to know you. I want to thank you. And you already promised that you're coming back on, so we are going to stay in touch for sure. And we can't wait to share this with everybody. You know, every episode is you were talking earlier about, you know, the stigma, right? Of the brown bag and the homeless. Like every episode, here's another cliche, recover out loud, which is a new cliche for me, but people are recovering out loud.
Yeah.
Every single day, every episode, every discussion is lessening that stigma as well. So it's been a pleasure to get you on today. It's been a pleasure having you on and talking. You're a fascinating man, and I can't wait to see what the future brings.
Thanks, man. We'll definitely be in touch, and I love what you're doing. Congratulations, and thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. And that'll do it for another episode of the Begin Again podcast. Tune in to wherever you get all your podcasts and hear this amazing story for Dino. And have a great day, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another powerful episode of the Begin Again podcast. We sincerely appreciate your time and support. We hope that today's conversation has ignited a spark within you, affirming that recovery is not only attainable, but can also be a wellspring of strength and resilience. Our ultimate goal is to make a difference in someone's life every single day. By sharing these stories of redemption, we strive to empower you and inspire you to unlock your fullest potential, facilitate positive transformations, and contribute to creating a better future for yourself, for your loved ones, and the world at large. If you know someone who could benefit from listening to our show, please share it with them. And if you resonate with our mission and feel compelled to do so, we would greatly appreciate your support through a 5-star review, following us on Instagram, and subscribing to our YouTube channel, The Begin Again Podcast. The more positive reviews we receive and the wider our message spreads, the greater our collective ability to help others realize that change is possible in their own lives. Thank you once again for being part of our community. May you be blessed on your own journey of personal growth and transformation.